name of our Israeli family and friends living with the pain of war, grant ingenuity to all that seek a path to peace. In the name of hostages who suffer as we pray, grant us strength to conquer despair among our people as we yearn for their return. In the name of victims of terror and fallen soldiers, grant us courage to stand up to extremists in our own midst and among our neighbors. In the name of Palestinian and Israeli civilians who anguish or have lost their lives, renew our faith in Isaiah's vision that one day nation shall not take up sword against nation. They shall never again know war. So, as you can see, it's the two of us. So I am going to give you a little spoiler of tonight's sermon because I am not walking around like I normally do. I am going to stay here on the pulpit. That's not the spoiler. I am going to bring out a conversation about Zionism. And I want to make sure that I say what I want to say. And I want to make sure that you hear what I want to say, but more importantly, if you disagree, that is totally cool. Just if everybody can just keep all of our desires for it to reflect exactly where we are, to just calm it down for a bit, to listen, to engage, to disagree, to agree. Let's try it as a community, because the Jewish community is not doing well with this one. And I decided, because of the amazing Torah portion, Ekev, which is all about going into the land, that I would address the issue of Zionism and actually define Zionism, which is not something I've ever had to do until now. So I'm going to begin with a story. In 1982, I was accepted to Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, as a rabbinical student. I had grown up in a Reform congregation, and I decided after meeting a woman who was in rabbinical school that that's something I wanted to do, not totally aware of what that meant. But here I was in Jerusalem in June 1982. I had been there when I was 16 on a NIFTY, a Northern Federation, the Reform Movement's youth group program. But I hadn't really engaged in any other way since then. I show up at HUC, Hebrew Union College, and lo and behold, wow, Steve Leder was there, who grew up here in this synagogue, in this temple. Steve Leder, I'm like, what are you doing here? The last time I saw you, I was 17 and you were 16. What are you doing here? And he said, guess what, Marcie? I'm in rabbinical school too. So we remembered quickly the amazing trip we took for 6 weeks, 3 weeks on a kibbutz where we picked pears, where we one day had a celebration because one of the people who were part of the Entebbe raid was part of this kibbutz and grew up on this kibbutz and returned home as a hero. We felt face to face. We got lost in the Golan Heights and actually had to be airlifted. Well, actually, the IDF was airlifted into the Golan Heights to save us, because you can imagine Israel wasn't too excited to be losing 25 young American teens, and that is what happened. And then we got walked out of the Golan Heights. We had such great memories, and here we were again, living there for a year, and we were beginning to become rabbis, leaders of the Jewish community. That was a time that seemed like it would always be true, where Israel was seen as a democracy in the region, and there was all positive feelings throughout the world. And we were ready to take on the leadership. It was an amazing year. And I've been back at least 24 plus times, back and forth, as I also had my children live there and be a part of the land of the Jewish people. I thought it was so important that they love Israel if they were going to critique it. And that's really, really my true definition of Zionism. It is to love Israel, not unconditionally, not without critique. I don't know of any of my loves that are quite like that, but a love that is faithful, not unwavering, or actually not in a way for us to question, but truly Zionism is important to me. And I will call myself a Zionist in interfaith circles, as I did this morning, as I would with Jewish community as well. Parshat Ekev is a parsha that talks about going into the land. It's Moses' long farewell speech. He reminds us of the journey that we took in the desert with all its failures and with God's love. Love God with all your heart and walk in God's ways. Love is not passive in Judaism. It doesn't come to you. You have to walk. You have to move. You have to wrestle. That's what love is in Judaism, and that is something that I truly appreciate. For me, Zionism is not blind allegiance to a government or a party. It is a covenant, the covenant that's about promise and purpose. To be a Zionist is to care deeply for the Jewish people, in my estimation, and the Jewish homeland. So deeply that we are willing to be honest about its shortcomings, and we are allowed to disagree. Love must be faithful, but not fanatical. It is holding the tension that we all feel, I think, or at least I do. The release of the hostages and what happened on October 7th is painful. It was a horrific destruction and murder. It was taking innocent people to become hostages that remain in this position even to this moment as hostages. But it wasn't just October 7th. Since then, there have been bombings in Israel from 7 different places. It is the images and the stories of Israeli children traumatized that I hold and that I truly have in my heart. And also, love is not to avert our eyes from suffering, from the suffering in Gaza. Images of starving children, of families displaced, break our hearts. Because I am a Zionist, it breaks my heart. Let's just be clear. I'm not talking politically. I'm not a political pundit. I really could give you facts that I hold, and you can give me facts that you hold. I am a rabbi, and so I want to redefine religious Zionism. It has been for too long monopolized by those who I consider to be extremists. The Haredi and Orthodox communities have owned what it means to be religious Zionists. It is the settlers who often are pictured as religious Zionists. But I want to reclaim it. I think religious Zionism belongs to all of us. And redefining it is going to take a great deal of time and effort and conversation. To be honest, conversation I feel like I haven't been able to have in the Jewish community. And to be honest, it is going to be the most important shield I have in talking to my interfaith partners. Not having this conversation is not by any means strengthening the Jewish community out in the world. I believe it's weakening us. Religious Zionism is not a weapon. It is a gift that we Reform, Conservative, and Reconstructionist Jews must grapple with, to redefine it, and not in political terms, but in religious terms. A vision that the land of Israel is not just real estate, but it's much more. It's a sacred trust, and that means we get a say in what happens. And we in the diaspora, well, we have to have conversations with the Jews in Israel, because it is important for us to understand one another, not to relegate one person's narrative stronger than the other, but rather a conversation about world Jewry, about what it means to be Jewish today, an expansive conversation, as well as the diversity of opinions that happen within the North American Jewish community. We must have our own conversations about Judaism, what it means, what our relationship is to our sacred text, what our relationship to the land of Israel, what our relationship is to one another. These are the conversations I hope we hold. In this week's Torah portion, we are told that God's eyes are always on the land that we are entering. God watches the land, not because it's perfect by any means. We humans are never perfect, but because it is precious. And in the preciousness, we must work together, because these conversations matter. There are critics who do not love Israel, and so often those who are critical are meshed with those others who, not out of love, it is out of just harshness and often based on an unfair assessment. Rising anti-Semitism is unsettling, and so I believe we have hunkered down and we have divided ourselves and isolated ourselves. And that is not something I can do. I need to be in conversation with the ministers and imam of the city of Minneapolis. I need to make sure that there is a Jewish voice at the table, and it will be a strong one, and it will be a loving one. Criticism of Israel is not inherently anti-Semitic, but denying the Jewish people a homeland is. Holding Jews collectively responsible for Israeli policies is. Erasing Jewish identity in the name of activism is. Having a litmus test of the Jews you'll let in or not in to your tent is very dangerous. We want to feel proud. We want to feel safe. And we want to feel that our voice is heard, even when there is disagreement. We can fight to be both pro-Israel and pro-justice. We can be self-critical and proud at the same time. And we can have no need to justify our identity. When we are asked to do so, that is clearly something that should hold us to be concerned. Moses reminds us as we enter the land of the golden calf. And it is in the breaking of the first set of tablets, if you remember, when Moses comes down from the mountain, he's holding the first set of the 10 Commandments. He throws them down and they break. But guess what happens? There's a new set. There is a new hope. Love is not blind, and it isn't easy. We know that from partnerships of all kinds. We know it takes work and honesty, and sometimes we get hurt on the way, or we get misunderstood on the way. But then we stay at the table, and we get to know ourselves better, and we deepen our relationship, and we show up. And that, my friends, is the most important. So I love Israel enough to want better from it and to want better for it. I love justice enough to not avert my eyes from suffering. I love Judaism enough to stay proud in the face of anti-Semitism. And I love peace enough to not abandon my hope for it, even when it seems so distant and far. Because to be Jewish is to hold the tension. That's what I love about Judaism. It's to carry memory, to demand dignity, and to act with love. But it is seeing the tension, as one of my teachers says, God lives in the contradictions. That means we must wrestle with the contradictions of our day, of our moment, and of our community. So here we are. Today, I'm bringing this out as a possible thing. I haven't talked about it for a very long time. I've walked around the edges of it. So we will co-create together. Yes, I'm here telling you that sometimes is upsetting for people. It feels unequal. But I want to equalize. I want to have these conversations. So tell me what you think. Tell me what you think in the sense of what you believe, not just what you think of what I'm saying. And I hope in my prayers today that you go home or go to dinner and you talk to each other about what you agree about what I've said and what you vehemently disagree about what I'm saying, so that you can better hone and define and figure out what you think about Israel, about Judaism, about what's ahead for the future for all of us. I hope you have those conversations, because I know at some of our dinner tables, we've stopped having them. And I think that's the most dangerous reality of all. So talk, argue, but respectfully so as you go forward. May we find strength in one another and strength in the future. Shabbat Shalom.